Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
The word integrity is quite an interesting word to me because it has meanings depending on where you're coming from. Most people think it's an ethical kind of thing, a person acts with integrity, we say, oh, they're obeying certain rules and they're trustworthy and so forth and so on. But actually, from a spiritual point of view, it has very little to do with that. Even though integrity does usually result in ethical action, that's not what it's about. What it's about is integrating the centers of our being so that they act as one. We have three major centers, and those centers are the thinking center, the feeling center, and the doing center, which is basically the body. So head, heart, body. Those are our major centers. Now we have others too. But if we can get these three functioning together, then you can produce a beautiful piece of music, such as what we just heard. If we get these three functioning together, then we actually are not three things happening, we're one thing happening, and all of them agreeing that that one thing will happen. It's very much like the difference between a light bulb. We've got several light bulbs up here, regular old, I guess they're incandescent, it feels rather warm. So, yeah, I think they're glowing with sorts of heat energy and light energy. And a laser. Have you ever seen a laser beam? Sometimes if you're in a room and it's got some smoke in it or something, you see the beam, that's it, one direction. It's not going out like that, it's going like that. Focused. That would be a person in integrity. All their energies focused. Not dispersed, not going in different directions, not fractured, not going away from each other so you don't quite know which way you're going. To me, one of the great symbols of integrity is a lighthouse. A lighthouse beams, that's it. Everything comes from one point, and it's a blessing to everything around it. That's a kind of integrity. Now there is a way of defining integrity, and that is what you see right there, Madeline Haney's definition. Integrity is when what you do, who you are, what you say, what you feel, and what you think all come from the same place. That sounds good on paper. Not so easy to do. Yeah, it isn't. Let's boil it down to just three things, the things we talked about. Integrity is when what you think, what you feel, and how you act all come from the same place. We'll cut out some other things there. We'll just leave it as three things, no? Okay. Well, are we ever out of integrity? Yes, most of the time we are. Most of the time we're saying one thing but feeling another and then doing a third. That's called fractured. That's called broken into pieces. And, we don't think too much about it. If someone comes up and invites us to a party and we say, oh, sure, I'll be happy to go to the party. But we really know that it would be boring, totally boring. So our heart's not in it. So do we show up at the party? No, because we always do what we feel, not do what we think. And then, of course, we send some sort of email excuse. But the point is, that's out of integrity. And it has nothing to do with ethics or morals or anything like that. It has to do with our centers are going in different directions. We're thinking one thing, which results in speaking it, and we're feeling another, and we're acting, maybe something in between, or almost always acting follows feelings. It doesn't follow thinking. Thinking is considered much weaker. Acting follows the feeling nature. You're going to get what you feel. So if you want to check in with integrity every once in a while, which is probably a pretty good idea, what you do is you look at this kind of definition we just saw and you say to yourself, am I behaving the way I really believe? And of course, you'll find often that that's not true. Ever taken a job simply because you need money, your heart wasn't in it? Oh, come on. Okay, yeah. All right, that's acting out of integrity. And what happens? Well, it works sort of. You know, you're not excited about it. You don't have the enthusiasm that causes the job to be really great. It's just something that makes money. And we have this sort of gap there, you know. There's a part of us that just isn't in it, and it's our heart, and you know, it just doesn't work very well. There's no real fulfillment there. Now, why does this happen? Well, believe it or not, it's built into us. It's impossible for it not to happen because of the nature of how we're created. We have a mind that actually has two different parts. It's like having a Congress that has two different parts. Okay? Maybe that gets it across. I don't know. Maybe I don't have to say anything more than that. But the idea is we have a conscious mind, and the conscious mind seems to be free to choose. And of course expects that, you know, it'll get results when it makes choices and so forth. And sometimes it does. Enough so that it sort of keeps on choosing. Then there's this thing called, sometimes it's called subconscious, sometimes it's called subjective, pretty much the same idea. It's a mind that does not choose. It has several attributes, though, that are quite interesting. And if we're not aware of this second level of mind, it is virtually impossible to live life successfully. It's that simple. This subjective or subconscious mind has a great memory. Now, do we consciously have great memories? No. What did you eat last Thursday at lunch? Right, there it goes. That's the proof, okay? We don't have great memories. But the subjective mind has a perfect record of every instant of your life. And maybe even other lives, who knows. But the point is, it's got it. Okay? It also has enormous power. But it can't choose. We have to choose. Once we choose, it takes our choices and makes them into experiences. I mean, for example, if you choose to shift to a new job, because this one is out of integrity, you know, eventually you begin to see some offers. A person says, well, they've got a good opening over here. And so it just sort of happens, and you don't quite know how it happens. You're not, quote, making it happen. It just happens. And that's the subjective mind. It has ways we know not of. That's another old way of putting it. Huh? It's very creative. It controls the body completely, beats the heart, digests the food, circulates the blood, the whole thing. And we don't tell it how to do that. You know, we just ask that it be so once in a while, and there it is. Now here's the problem with that. It sounds like a great situation. It sounds like we've got this wonderful area of us that, you know, pretty much can do everything and so forth. But here's what happens with it. Because it's got a great memory, you choose, let's say, at one point in your life to have an identity of some sort. Maybe you're choosing an identity of a teenager who loves their parents and their relatives and so forth. Okay. That is memorized at the subjective level. Perfect memorization. You chose that, you get it. Okay? And it stays in there, and until you go back and consciously change it, it's still there. Because the subjective mind cannot choose to change it. Okay? This is important stuff. So, are you acting like a teenager today? Unless you've reviewed teenager, yes, you are. So let's say this teenager had some relative, an aunt, an uncle, an older person who needed a lot of attention, and they were told by their parents, you must go and be with this person. I mean, after all, they're your aunt. And of course you didn't want to go and be with the person. You know, you'd much rather go out and be with the fellow teenagers and party and stuff like that. But you went to be with them, and you were so bored. that program is going to continue running forever until you go in there and do something about it. So now, someone says, oh, come to my party, and they look vaguely like your aunt. I mean, they may be a very fine person, you know, and it may be a fascinating party, well done and all that. But, sorry, your program's running. Yeah, you forgot to switch off that program. You know, the little things in your cell phone that, quote, run in the background, you know, and you wonder why the battery's going like that. They're running in the background. Yeah, that's the subjective mind. We're built that way. So what happens is, as we move ahead in our lives and perhaps want to change and grow and take on a new role or a new job or a new whatever, relationship, no one ever checks their programs. No one ever does the updating. And so why is it there's this splitting, this fracturing? You know, oh, sure, I'll come to the party, so they'll think well of you, and hell will freeze over before I go to that party. Yeah. There it is. There goes fracturing right there. Huh? Lack of integrity. We don't act as a whole. We act as parts. And you can see that this is built into us. We can't help this. We're going to act this way. This is the way it is. Most of the time we just ignore these little glitches of life, you know, and say, oh, well, they'll get over it. I'll, you know, talk to them later and so forth and so on. Carl Jung had a little thing to say about that. First of all, there's an iceberg. An iceberg means that about 10% is up above the water, 90% is down below. That's the way the relationship between conscious and subconscious works itself out. 10% of us is conscious, 90% is subjective, memorized, but very powerful. He says, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will control your life, and you will call it fate. Yeah. Well, I just wasn't meant to be there with her. There we go. That's a nice excuse right there. Fate. It's my karma. Right. Now, the actual process that gets us from fractured living to integrity was indicated years ago by Jesus. The Church of Religious Science, the older versions of it, this one is from what's called United Church of Religious Science, had this little diagram, and the diagram's kind of interesting. It's evocative. Conscious cause or spirit at the top. The middle band is subconscious medium, sometimes called soul. And then the world of effect out here in time, space, and so forth. And that little check mark sort of indicates that the conscious mind must interact with the subconscious mind to produce something in the world of effect. And as I say, the symbol is nice. It does give a correct kind of relationship, but it doesn't give a whole lot of details. So today we're going to go into some detail. We're going to go into what's called mind expansion steps. Now, to expand our mind, to expand ourselves, we have to go from just using the conscious level of logical thinking, limited memory, finite senses. We have to go away from that and embody the subjective level and get it going in our understanding of what's happening to us. In other words, we create a relationship with the other level of mind. Now remember, that other level of mind really, as far as we're concerned, is all powerful. It certainly has all knowledge. It's got all memory. It's got all of that, and it's sitting there just waiting for us to say something. Does this sort of, you know, if you want to get religious about this, let's see how many of you have religious backgrounds. You might call it God. How's that? You know, a lot of people don't like God. They had, you know, shall we say, an experience in childhood with the word God. Okay, so don't call it God. I don't care what you call it. And, I mean, some people call it Mary or John or whatever. That's fine. But the point is, this thing it's necessary to learn how to relate to it well. Because it's got all the cards. We just have very few. It's got the rest of them. Okay? So if we're going to play the game of life, we have to have this relationship. All right, now I'm going to add to that list. There's more to it than that. Let's start off, first of all, by dropping an idea, a very commonly held idea, and that is that the cause of your disharmony and your pain and suffering in life is another person. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the most defeating idea there is on the planet. Because if it's another person, there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, they're another person. They have their own thinking. They can do what they want. They have the same freedom I do. Oh, well, that's it. All right, game over at that point. Then all you do is sit, watch TV, and just wait until it all ends. Wondering what happened. It's not what happened, it's what didn't happen. That's the problem. You didn't happen. So the first thing to stop is that another person's the cause of my problem, my suffering. Now this is not easy. It takes time to do this. I know people who've been in this teaching for decades and have been well trained and so forth, are still blaming others for their problems. Still. It's not easy. This really takes practice. The real cause is in our mind's, quote, dysfunction. The real cause is the fact that we're thinking one thing consciously and we're feeling another thing subconsciously. They're not hitting, they're bypassing each other, producing problems. A lack of integrity does not feel good, and it does not produce good results in relationships and so forth and so on. Okay. Number 2, become aware of your inner mind as if it is a giant database of memory. Just, if we're going to follow the Jesus little description of go into the closet, close the door, speak to the Father who's in secret, who will reward you openly and so forth. If we're going to do that, then when you go in there, you have to recognize what presence you're in. There has to be some sense of recognition of what this presence is. I mean, if you go into the closet and close the door, it's dark, that's it. Okay, no, there's something in there. What is it that's in there? Remember, it's invisible, it's intangible, you can't touch it. What is it? All right, we've had a little hint, and one of the hints is it's got perfect memory. It's a giant database of perfect memory. Okay? If that's so, you can ask it to reveal to you the data that is causing the split in your understanding now. Why is it you're thinking one way and acting another way? What is the cause of that? Where's the data? Show me the data. Now, since we can't remember what we ate last week, it's got to come up from a deeper level. It's got to come from the subconscious to the conscious. When you request it, you've made a choice. And the subconscious says, oh, sure, I'll show it to you. It may happen within seconds. It may take hours. It may take days. It's going to come up. Just be patient. Okay? And what will it be like? It'll most likely be an event. Most likely a specific memory, a specific event involving specific people, words, thoughts, feelings, and so forth. Almost always, it's what's called, in the East, it's called a lila. A lila simply means a little miniature drama, a little play that was memorized perfectly many, many years ago and is now being represented. Why? Because you asked for it to be represented. Okay? Now, what happens in that play? Well, what happens in that play is lots of things. Something happened. You were told you had to go and stay with your grandmother or aunt or whatever, and you felt your thoughts and your feelings from that time will come back through you, and you will feel them and think them. Don't be afraid of this. This is fine. It is important that you go back and feel and think what happened. Okay? Because that's how you access the data that's coming up. You understand what it is. And then you see, oh, there's my misinterpretation. That's where I got the whole thing wrong. I thought that I had to do that because I was supposed to love my aunt or whatever. And I could ignore the fact that I had desires to be other places, of other people. And in other words, I could ignore me for another person. That's what I thought. That's what I believed. And I got angry at that. And I never examined the anger to find out if maybe the anger was telling me to change my thoughts. So you see all the details of this kind of thing unfolding, and indeed you see your own part in it. And almost inevitably what you're going to see is a gross misinterpretation of something that happened, or an idea that you used because you're at that point, your mind was immature, you didn't know any better, didn't have any input from maybe teachers and so forth, so you thought something that simply is not true. Okay. So that's what happens in the database retrieval process. Now it's time to talk to this same mind, this subjective mind, and change your mind and say, I no longer believe that way. I now understand that I can actually be with other people when it's appropriate and also honor myself and give myself the time I need. I can do self-care. I can do all these things. I don't have to be with someone because I'm supposed to be with someone. I give myself permission to follow my heart. Okay, this is your new decision now. And because you're doing it in this atmosphere of retrieving the data from the old decision, a replacement occurs. Now, here's an important thing about the replacement. Don't try to make it happen. You cannot take on the role of the subjective mind. That's impossible. The subjective mind is an infinite mind. Sorry, we're not. All right. But what we can do is say, would you please take this new realization and replace the old one with it? And just ask it to do that. Do not assume that you have to do anything further. This is called release. Let go. The actual replacement, the actual rejuvenation of a new you, a new identity, new feelings, new behavior, more integrity, all of that has to be done by the basic mind, the fundamental mind that we call the subjective or the subconscious. Now, this is not exactly what is expressed in go into the closet, close the door, and speak to the Father who's in secret and so forth. It's indicated, but the details aren't in there. And these are the details, mostly in terms of modern psychology, but that's the important thing, is that this become a process in our lives that we're willing to use regularly. Because believe me, the disharmony, the dysfunction, the out of integrity is rampant in modern human beings. Now there is actually a level that can go deeper than this. What we've been talking about is a person having integrity within themselves, within their own personality structure, so that they think, feel, and act together. But it's also possible for us to expand the sense of integrity to the entire universe. The universe has become very interesting in the past 100 years or so, especially the outer universe of stars and so forth. The inner universe has become equally interesting, but most of us can't see that. We can't perceive quantum level and all that. But the stars, Hubble Space Telescope, all these wonderful pictures, the discoveries that are made about black holes and whatnot, all of that is really quite fascinating. But what I wonder is, do we understand that it's modeling something for us? One of the great traditions, it was actually the tradition that started in Egypt. It was Hermes. He used to say, as above, so below. That was one of his great statements. And every teaching has agreed with that. No, there's no disagreement there at all. What we consider to be within is the same as what we consider to be without. We're actually looking at our inner nature when we look outward. Or as this little picture shows you, you've got the whole world and more than the world inside you. So as we discover more and more about our external universe, we're actually discovering more and more about who we are. Well, one of the things that was discovered a few years ago was our universe, the whole thing, is not only expanding, the expansion of this universe is accelerating. And you say, well, that's good. No, not necessarily. It's just what's happening, and frankly, it can't be explained. With our supercomputers today, we can model the universe. We know about how much mass it has. Believe it or not, we can calculate the mass of the universe. It's big. And the point is that when you've got something that's very large, moving outward like this, and you can see it's usually done with balloons like that. You have a balloon and keep blowing it up and blowing it up and blowing it up, and everything on the surface of the balloon gets farther from everything else. So we're getting more and more space in the universe as it gets larger and larger. Okay, at some point, the gravity of the universe should pull it back together again, or at least slow down the expansion. Our most recent, very precise measurements are that no, it's continuing to expand at an accelerated rate. And this, of course, can't be explained. Physicists don't know the answer to that. It's okay, we'll invent a term. And the term they invent is dark matter. Just don't ask them what it is, that's all. Because there is no answer for that. The answer is it's the stuff that makes the universe continue to expand. It's anti-gravity. It's matter that pushes instead of pulls together. Right. Okay. You know, I mean, you've got to pay them. They're nice people. All right, but there they are. All right, so the universe continues to expand. There are many things in life that continue to expand. Some of them we really don't like much at all. How about the cost of living? Continue to expand? Have you ever seen prices go down? Anyway, raise your hand if you have. No one's raising their hand. Electronics, I know, yeah. Just because they produce so much of it. Okay, so what happens when prices go up? Well, you say, oh, but 10 years ago I paid this for something. And we get angry, right? Oh, there goes our integrity. And so what should we be looking at? Maybe it's right that prices expand. Maybe it's right that the universe continues to expand. Maybe if prices go up, we'll have to accept more and more about an identity that is wealthy for us. Could that be it? Is the universe sort of pushing us into knowing who we really are, including wealth? You know, it's the old hot poker motivation thing, you know. Just expand the prices. They'll figure it out. Well, some of us do, some of us don't. How about relationships that we've been in for a long time? I think most people realize that after a while, you know, yeah, it needs to be reviewed, it needs to be discussed, it needs to be shared, we need to grow, each one of us in a relationship needs to do this so that we could actually continue the relationship and maybe even have a wonderful experience that we haven't had before. Well, The Odd Couple was a wonderful movie and show, and so we're going to show a little video here about the need for expansion.
What you do is worse. You're always in my bathroom, hanging up my towels. Whenever I smoke, you follow me around with an ashtray. Last night I found you in the kitchen, washing the floor, shaking your head and moaning, footprints, footprints.
I didn't say they were yours.
Well, they were mine, damn it. I have feet, they make prints. What do you want me to do, climb across the cabinets?
No, I just want you to walk on the floor.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. I really do.
All I'm trying to do is keep this place livable. And I irritated you that much.
Leave my pictures alone.
I was just trying to even them up.
I want them uneven. They're my pictures. Even up your own pictures.
What a good show that was. Showed us ourselves, right? That's the way we are. Okay, well, there are many things in life that could bear some expansion. Meaning, expansion in the sense of, who am I? Am I more than I thought? What is our relationship? Is it more than I thought? Yeah. In other words, if we do not update our software, we put ourselves in a very dangerous area. You know what happens when you don't update your software on a computer? Eventually the computer just goes off. can't run. That's it. So we have to update our own software. And this process of integrity is exactly how we do it. I'm going to use some words now that come from, actually he's an American, but he's also a Brit, T.S. Eliot, known for his poetry, essays, and so forth. He was an amazing person. He was an amazing observer of life. And he wrote down words that are difficult to read because he's right and we know it. Yeah. So here's the first one. The endless cycle of idea and action, endless invention, endless experiment brings knowledge of motion, but not of stillness. Knowledge of speech, but not of silence. Knowledge of words and ignorance of the word. All our knowledge brings us nearer to our ignorance. All our ignorance brings us nearer to death. But nearness to death, no nearer to God. Where is the life we have lost in living? Where is the wisdom we have lost in knowledge? Where is the knowledge we have lost in information? The cycles of heaven in 20 centuries bring us farther from God and nearer to the dust. Now he wrote that 50 some odd years ago. And he didn't know anything about small screens. And, and yet he hit it right on the head. The information from the internet, tons of information. What has it really done for us? It's stolen away our time. How many hours a day do we spend email and texting and so forth? Somehow we lived before this time without these devices. Right? This picture is of my granddaughter Julia and her father Grant. And it's a little hard to see, but in front of Julia is his cell phone, his iPhone. So she's being introduced to the world of knowledge, information, and so forth. That is, in the bottom line in terms of spirituality is it's meaningless. It just absorbs the precious moments of life. Now, she may or may not be affected by it. Who knows? It's kind of hard to tell. She's very young. But the neurotic behavior that occurs in our modern world with these devices and various other things creates a superficial life. It has no deep value to it. Now, he gave us another quote, which I think is quite interesting. I've given you the power of choice, and you only alternate between futile speculation and unconsidered action. Ouch. Yep. Thanks, T.S. Yeah, he pins it down. But we still have choice. And what he's saying to us is, exercise it. Do something with it. If you don't get the muscles out there stretching and lifting and doing things, you lose them. Use it or lose it. To choose to be in our world, to choose to be with people, to choose to face our own lack of integrity is important. It's how we grow. It's how we stretch our spiritual muscles. Sometimes I think of this as pushing against the barriers of the mind. The barriers of the mind are mostly emotional. A fear of doing this, a fear of saying something to someone, a fear of actually saying what we really think and feel. This is pushing against those emotional barriers. Where do those fears come from? See, if you understand the mind, you understand that they're not going to go away without you choosing for them to go away. The subconscious memorizes everything. It does not change those memories. It does not alter them. Why? Because at some point, as we begin to wake up, we're going to need to have those memories unaltered, just the way they were, as the data through which we progress. So it does not change the memories. Now, does that happen between lifetimes? Yes, it does. And that's why people come into this lifetime and they obviously have a program going already. If you've had more than one child, they're not the same. Some children are very loving, very warm. Other children are very meek and very frightened of life. What's going on? The subconscious is bringing in things from other experiences. Okay. But if we push against this mind in the sense that we delve into the subconscious, make it a friend, ask it for help, ask it for its power to engage a replacement process, replace the old impressions with new understanding. If we do that, then here's a third quote. We shall not cease from exploring, and at the end of our exploring will be to arrive where we started and know the place for the first time. And there again is Julia, and the reason I chose that particular picture is because she's in bliss. She doesn't know she's in bliss. She's going to have to go through a life experience to know that that is who she is. She is the bliss. And we're right in the middle of it. We're right in that process right now. Here at CSA, we asked you to join us at the beginning of this year, the end of last year, in your financial support of this organization. We asked you to increase your financial support to a certain level, and a lot of people said, oh yes, wonderful response. Lots of pledges. It was really wonderful. Of course, this ensures our operation, our ongoing operation. If something's in this world, it has to be supported financially. It will not exist without that. It's that simple. But there's more to it than that. When you expand giving, expand financial support, what you're doing is doing what the universe wants. It wants expansion. In order to do that, you're going to have to face the disharmony within you. You're going to have to face that fear of, well, maybe I won't have enough, and I've got an expense about the car coming up. Now, I can't do it this month. That's the opportunity for not only your growth, but sustaining the organization that teaches us. So it's actually done not just to pay the bills. It's done because this moves the agenda of integrity forward into the region of expansion. If we can't expand a good way of functioning in this world, then eventually that's going to become a trap for us. So today, several of our board members are going to come and talk to you about what's happened, give you the reports and so forth. But the point I'm trying to make here is, how does it relate to the ability of an individual to expand into life, into their own life more and more, to find their own divine nature, to harmonize with it, to be one with it. That's what this is. It's a challenge life places before us. Either we accept it or we don't. And if we don't accept it, well, there's many more lifetimes we can accept it somewhere. But you can accept it now. It's up to you. Can I be growing the way the universe is growing? Or do I have to remain a clam on the bottom of the ocean? If this does come about, if you do accept this, then there's a beautiful quote that Margaret Mead made many years ago. Never doubt that a small group of concerned citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. She's talking about us. We're a small group of concerned citizens. We're interested in human life. We're interested in how human life works well. This is what's taught. We've expanded. We've done our best to expand. Gone onto the internet, streaming online, and so forth and so on. They can change the world. That's us. Let's do a treatment. Let's take this inside. Treatment is just sort of a mini version of this process we've been talking about today. Let's be grateful. Grateful for true knowledge. Knowledge of who we truly are. There is nothing worth more. Because knowledge of who we truly are will permeate every moment of every life we ever have. To know that there is a mind that is far greater than our mind, immediately present, immediately responsive, more than willing to provide us with whatever we need, more than willing to do for us everything we think we have to do. A mind that you could say loves us. It created us, it loves us, and it loves to play with us. It loves to play universe with us. It loves to play human being on a planet with us. There's nothing more valuable than this. This attitude is what takes us out of the ordinary concept, the drudgery of human life, walking on the side of a planet trying to eke out a living, and moves us into actually a divine presence. We are that divine presence individualized. This knowledge is the true knowledge. It permeates every teaching that there is. It's what every great saint and savior has ever said. And we know it. We know it. And with that knowing comes the responsibility of using it. Because if you know this and don't use it, there's that feeling of missing something. So we do use it. We take this knowledge, we make it our life, we interact with this divine wholeness, we let it be us, we let it guide us, we let it produce for us a life that is wonderful. And so it is.